our Mexican American border, the big threat for me is because like I said, I see on both sides as well. I'm empathetic towards it all. I understand it all. At the same time, like someone who's done, tours overseas, seen really bad dudes, know the potential and the connections from a lot of those guys from overseas who are the connections to people here in America, knowing some of the threats that have been stopped before it even happened. Then you see what's happening currently on our borders and knowing that the massive influx of, let's just say Chinese nationals currently, there's a massive influx of Chinese nationals, but not even that. They're shedding their documents, right? They're throwing them to the wayside. They're hiding their identities. And then it raises the question is why? And so those are a lot of the things that I'm seeing currently and what we've been getting reports from people that we interview. And that raises a question, that raises some fears. But I don't know how realistic those fears are. And I'm curious to know, maybe in your opinion, maybe from your expertise, what you think.
Sure. I mean, I think if we, put things in different classes, right? So obviously the China thing is a strategic threat, right? It's the fact that those persons have a loyalty to their country. And if they get called upon, they will serve their country, right? I think that's the biggest fear with Chinese. And really one of the biggest problems with them is numerous countries have no requirements. So in Ecuador, like a Chinese citizen doesn't need a visa, right? So they fly to Ecuador and come up. So they didn't even really need to do some sort of vetting process ahead of time to even come here. That's why it's also easy to shed their documents, right? They're kind of unknowns. But when you look at some of the other groupings of people, I mean, I spend a lot of time on Afghans, but let's just move over to other countries in the region. Let's do Uzbekistan, for example, right? So we've had 3,000 Uzbeks come into our country in the last 7 months. The really interesting thing a lot of people don't understand is, so a lot of Uzbeks went and fought with ISIS in Iraq and Syria. So in the last couple of years, the senior leadership of ISIS actually moved to Pakistan's Baluchistan. So all those fighters now started returning home. So the interesting part is a bunch of Uzbeks went back to Uzbekistan. And so the terrorists have been using them to recruit kind of the next generation. And the terrorists being ISIS, and then ISIS's Khorasan province, ISKP, and then Al-Qaeda. And they're usually doing it through the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan. So basically there's three major terrorist groups recruiting in Uzbekistan. We really have no way to, as you can imagine, vet new terrorist recruits, right? So anyone coming to our southern border from Uzbekistan, if they were newly trained in a training camp, we don't know who they are. And right now the training camps are in Afghanistan and Pakistan. So if they're going to train with Al-Qaeda or, IMU is the short term of the Uzbek group, they train in Afghanistan. If they train with ISKP, the camps on the other side of the border in Tir Valley, Pakistan. So there's thousands of people going through these camps and targeting our border. It's very dangerous. Like I said, there is no way to vet them because they don't have prior records in our system.
How about this? What if someone comes from Uzbekistan and just claims political asylum? Are they able to claim political asylum from that country right now?
I mean, maybe if there's some sort of unique group and the government, might have some sort of crackdown on them. But other than that, I mean, I don't know why we have an influx, as you can imagine, of 7,000. It's very, 3,000. It's very dangerous. Just a few years ago, we only had 700 Uzbeks for the entire year come to our border, right? So people need to keep in mind some of these numbers. Another really big problem is India, right? So most Indians, right? I mean, the poor class really is coming here, for what they say, right? An economic thing, which is what we hear from most of the people in Latin America. But there are members of ISIS flying on these flights. And the really interesting part is, I don't know if you remember in March, but one of the flights landed in Paris and they're like, what the heck? Who are these 400 Indians on here? Like the French couldn't vet them. Well, what people don't realize is those flights have now been diverted and they're leaving India and they're going to Benghazi. So they go to Benghazi, Libya, and then they're flying to Nicaragua. So 2 weeks ago, two flights, so two like big Boeings, like the whole 400 people, they left from Benghazi on a local Libyan airline that basically only flies to Tunisia and Turkey, and they landed in Nicaragua. So like 800 Indians. So private chartered plane, it's not clear they went through any sort of vetting process, and everybody on both planes was to come to the US border. So we have to also look at these countries allowing these flights to land, allowing these unvetted persons that they know are just coming to go to our border. The US has a lot of carrots and sticks. Why aren't we putting more pressure on these Latin American countries, issuing these visas, offering these flight clearances? I'm sorry, Gadames Air it's like a dinky airline in Libya. Like, no country should be allowing it to land. To be honest, in Libya, one of a very senior terrorist actually owns an airline. Like, I wouldn't let a Libyan airline land on my soil to begin with. So it's just a huge problem.
Yeah, that's scary. And most of those individuals, first of all, the cost of what that is, who's paying that, which always concerns me. The farther the trip, who's paying that bill? And it blows my mind because it's always a concern. Like, man, that someone has a lot of money. And for me, if you have that kind of money, why leave? You're the king of your own castle wherever you're at. And so to come to our country, there's always a concern for me. I don't understand that. But not even that is, they're chartering down to Ecuador and then they're making their way up through our borders. And then what? Like you said, there's no vetting system. Our system, I don't know how many countries we can actually identify their past history, right? Their past criminal history, but not a lot of them. And so people coming from India in that manner, yeah, those numbers have been through the roof as well recently.
Yeah, and like some countries we can't vet at all, like Syria, right? We have no relationship with that government. We can't vet them. But the really smart thing is some of these people, like in Afghanistan, what they're doing is basically having these terrorists come in and then they're checking their biometrics and making sure they were never in our system before sending them to our border. So they're pre-planning to ensure we don't have biometrics on the terrorists they're sending. So they're being smart about this too.